A certain coach once said, "You win with people." That philosophy is the bedrock of Ohio State football. Names like Hayes, Harley, Cassidy, Willis, Tatum, Spillman, Gradishar, and George are a virtual roll call of college football's greatest figures. Yet for all its individual excellence, Ohio State football is larger than any one player, coach, or team. It's the horseshoe, Script Ohio, senior tackle, and Buckeye leaves. It's over a century of pride and tradition, a tradition that lives today.
Tradition. It's the bedrock of college football. From the Trojan horse of Southern Cal to Oklahoma's Sooner Schooner, the rights of the game have become a transcendent bond, uniting generations into an invisible yet indestructible union of pride, passion, and history. These traditions, glorified by time, have elevated the game from mere competitions to grand displays of human spectacle. The bands, the mascots, the rituals, the rivalries. These elements, uniquely flavored yet common in spirit, unfold every year across America, on autumn days and nights, on legendary fields of battle. And when it comes to tradition, perhaps no one has more, or does it better, than Ohio State.
This tradition is second to none. I don't think any other university can match up when it comes to tradition.
This has been going on for 1900.
Ohio State has a great tradition of planting a Buckeye tree for each Ohio State All-American.
The gold pants that tells you that you beat Michigan. That's the greatest tradition there is.
One of the longest traditions in Ohio State football is senior tackle.
It's your last practice, your last hit, and for some guys, that's their last hit ever. It's a great tradition.
The captain's brunch is another one.
Yeah, it's the band, it's the cheerleaders. I mean, there's a spectacle that takes place inside Ohio Stadium.
People never tire of the Script Ohio.
The crowd just roars in anticipation, and it was incredible.
Well, I might be a little bit prejudiced, but I don't think there's any other facility in the whole world like Ohio Stadium.
There's always electricity going into Ohio Stadium. I still feel it today.
The roar, the colors, all you see is Scarlet and Gray. Man.
Just so much tradition there that makes Ohio State what it is.
You don't find too many places like Ohio State. It is a special place.
The tradition of Ohio State football, none can touch it.
That tradition has been over 110 years in the making. Yet over a century ago, as the seeds of the game were first being sown, few could have envisioned that Ohio State football would blossom into one of America's great sports traditions. America's first known college football game took place in 1869 between Rutgers and Princeton. The new sport's popularity spread quickly, and schools in the West soon formed teams of their own.
Actually, Ohio State was one of the last schools in this part of the country to really have a formal football program. For instance, the University of Michigan started its program in 1879, Ohio State not until 1890. In the early days, students really knew nothing about what a football looked like, and a student by the name of George Cole sent away to the Spalding Sporting Goods Company and purchased both a football and a rules book. When the football was delivered to the Ohio State campus, they thought it really had been some type of an error because nobody had ever seen this oblong type of object before, and I guess there at one time was a thought that they would even send it back.
The ball stayed, and on May 3rd, 1890, the Ohio State Buckeyes played their very first game, a 20-14 victory against Ohio Wesleyan in Delaware, Ohio. Not that anyone noticed.
I think you could characterize Ohio State football, or probably any other football program in its infancy, as like a youth league, little league baseball or softball game. Sometimes the games were only scheduled 2 or 3 days before they were played. Some schools do not even agree on what the final scores were, so things extremely informal by today's standards.
As the game and the team began to take shape, the local press started to take notice.
Well, in the mid-1890s, the Columbus newspapers, particularly the old Ohio State Journal at that time and the Columbus Dispatch, began devoting a little bit more of their sports pages to the Ohio State football program. And those 3 or 4 years there, it really grew. As the crowd started to grow, the administration designated a piece of land up at what now is Woodruff and High Street to move the athletic field up to that location.
The new facility became known as Ohio Field, and its construction set the stage for the era's 2 most significant events, Ohio State's entrance into the Big Ten, and the arrival of Charles W. Harley, also known as Chick. Harley was the Buckeyes' first true star and a big gate attraction.
Before Harley's arrival, oftentimes some high schools might draw bigger crowds for their games than Ohio State drew for its games. But in 1916, with Chick Harley in its backfield, Ohio State had its first undefeated, untied season and won its first Big Ten title.
Harley's exploits filled Ohio Field's stands to overflowing, and when he left in 1919, the crowd stayed, which created a problem. Just 22 years after the opening of Ohio Field, the university was once again in need of a larger venue. Their solution would change the face of college football forever. From its earliest beginnings in 1890, Ohio State football toiled in relative obscurity, having marginal success on the field with little recognition off it. But all that changed with the arrival of an electrifying running back from Columbus, Chick Harley.
And in Harley's 3 seasons of 16, 17, and 19, all of a sudden Ohio State football became the thing in Columbus, Ohio. And Harley's really the guy that provided the enthusiasm which led to the fundraising campaign, of course, to build Ohio Stadium, which was then developed and built in 1922.
Ohio Stadium was the principal vision of 4 men: engineering professor Thomas French, athletic director L.W. St. John, university president William Oxley, and architect Howard Dwight Smith, a faculty member at Ohio State's School of Architecture. Smith drew inspiration from his study of the ancient Roman and Greek ruins, like the Colosseum and the Parthenon, and he incorporated many of their features into his design. At the urging of St. John, Smith added a second deck to accommodate more seats, while leaving the south end open to allow track and field events to be held there as well. But when the university's Board of Trustees balked at paying for the project, French and a collection of local businessmen went to the public to raise the necessary funds. Their energetic campaign drew an enthusiastic response, and their $1 million goal was reached in just 4 months. After a final battle over the stadium's design and location, the project broke ground in August of 1921. A little over a year later, on October 7, 1922, the new stadium opened for business, with the Buckeyes defeating Ohio Wesleyan 5-0. 80 years later, Ohio Stadium stands as one of college football's most recognizable and enduring landmarks.
The vision that people had in 1922 to build this stadium, you don't build 70,000-seat stadiums in 1922, and people here had the vision to do that, and boy, this is something that is awful special.
To put together an edifice where you pretty near copied the Colosseum of Rome, piece by piece, the vision that they had, I think, was marvelous.
I'm biased. There's not another football stadium like it in the world.
Just being in that stadium, which has a lot of tradition, a lot of history behind it. A lot of great men have been in that stadium and played in a lot of great games.
And that stadium brings yesteryear together now with today's modern football era. We can get 100,000 people in there now, but yet it still hasn't changed what the horseshoe looks like and what it's all about. And I think our greatest edge in recruiting right now is that I think we have the finest stadium in the world.
On October 21st, 1922, 2 weeks after the first game, Ohio Stadium was officially dedicated. Over 72,000 fans filled every inch of the revolutionary new horseshoe. Thousands more were turned away at the gates. The stadium received rave reviews, but the Buckeyes lost the game 19-0. Their opponent was Michigan.
Well, in my opinion, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry is the greatest tradition in all of Ohio State football.
History will tell you that the Michigan-Ohio State game is the game.
The rivalry here is like no other, the Michigan-Ohio State rivalry. They talk about Texas A&M. They talk about Alabama and Auburn. They talk about the Floridas. Well, those are your Johnny-come-latelys.
The first game between Ohio State and Michigan was played way back in 1897, and Michigan really dominated the early years. In fact, Ohio State won none of the first 15 games.
Led by the great Chick Harley, Ohio State finally beat Michigan 13-3 in 1919. But when the Buckeyes could muster just 5 more wins over the next 14 years, new coach Francis Schmidt looked to provide his team with a new source of motivation.
Francis Schmidt came to Ohio State as its head coach in 1934. When he first addressed the team, he said, you know, fellas, they put their pants on one leg at a time just like you do, and we're going to have to start the tradition here of beating this Michigan team a lot more regularly.
Schmidt's Buckeyes responded with a 34-0 whitewashing of the Wolverines, giving the rivalry new life and Ohio State a new tradition.
As a result of this kind of off-the-cuff remark, it was decided that miniature gold pants, emblematic of the Michigan team, of course, would be awarded to all Ohio State players and coaches each season that Ohio State defeats Michigan.
That's the greatest tradition there is. The gold pants that tells you that you beat Michigan.
I got pants from Ohio State. I mean, it's kind of a unique thing.
My wife wears them around her neck to this day. Every day she wears the gold pants.
My mother has a pair and I have a pair, so every week, every year during Michigan Week, we pull them out and wear them for the whole week.
When both schools agreed in 1935 to make their deepening rivalry the last game of the season, Michigan Week became the centerpiece for another long-standing tradition.
One of the longest traditions in Ohio State football is senior tackle. That was started by Dr. John Wills, who first coached Ohio State in 1913, and that was the year Ohio State entered the Big Ten Conference. Dr. Wills thought it would be very nice if all of the seniors on that year's team, at the end of practice on that Friday, would take one last ceremonial hit on a tackling dummy, kind of symbolic of them getting ready to play their last game for the Scarlet and Gray.
It's a great tradition, just a great tradition. And again, it's just something that kind of says some finality to your career. You know, you've worked hard, you sweated, you dropped blood out in this field, you've broken bones out in this field. Hey, now it's your last go-around.
One of the fondest memories I have of that, though, is senior tackle when Coach Bruce got to hit the sled, because as a player at Ohio State, he was injured his senior year and never participated in senior tackle.
Yeah, we did the senior tackle, and then the kid said, well, Coach, this is your last time. You've got to hit it.
And you could just see him, and man, did he hit the sled. He popped it, which was cool. I'll never forget that, because I know that it meant a lot to him.
It's that sum total of the tradition, the history, the people that kind of come together at that one place and time on Senior Tackle Day and just kind of bring home to you everything that whole experience was about.
For more than 100 years, Ohio State football has been a beacon of excellence, setting the standards for pride and devotion. In that time, rituals like senior tackle, the Gold Pants Club, Buckeye leaves on helmets, and the ringing of the victory bell have become an indelible part of Buckeye tradition. But perhaps the greatest Buckeye tradition of them all never threw a pass, never made a tackle, or even wore a helmet. Yet without it, Ohio State football would be incomplete.
Every time I hear the band, I get a smile on my face.
I think it's just that military precision that they had, and then you hear them. You know, you hear them play, and you're like, whoa.
Whether it's the band breaking into Hang On Sloopy or the fight song, you get that sense, and it's a tremendous uplift.
I'll get excited again just, you know, hearing that all over again in my mind, but just hearing the Ohio State band just being pumped, we got even more pumped.
Formed in 1878 as a 12-piece fife and drum corps, the band, like the football team, grew slowly. But in 1896, the university hired professional musician Gustav Bruder, and the band began to take shape. By the early 20s, led by the nation's first strutting drum major, Edwin Tubby Essington, the band grew to 100 members strong. 2 of their staple songs are still played today. Fight the Team Across the Field was written in 1915 by an Ohio State student named William Doherty. Introduced at a pep rally for the 1915 Illinois game, it remains one of college football's most famous and recognized fight songs. Buckeye Battle Cry, written in 1919, took on added significance with the opening of Ohio Stadium. The band's entrance into the massive horseshoe, unveiled in 1928, serves as a stadium-wide call to arms.
Just to see the drum major come out, tip his hat, touch it on the ground, there's just nothing like it.
Marching in precise steps, the band's military heritage is on full display.
At the turn of the century, about the 1920s, all bands were ROTC bands wearing a military uniform. And with us, that evolution did take place in as much as the uniform that we currently have is a replica of the Army ROTC uniform of that period. So uniforms have changed with bands, but we have kept our military tradition and our military look.
That look is bolstered by the band's signature sound.
Back in 1934, the director decided to go to an all-brass sound. And to my knowledge, I'm not sure there's of another Division I band that is completely and totally all-brass. And that gives us a unique sound.
All these elements, the sound, the look, the precision, and the military history, come together for what might be the ultimate tradition in college football, Script, Ohio. First performed in 1936, Script, Ohio has become the band's quintessential trademark. But its origin remains shrouded in mystery.
The University of Michigan band playing in Columbus on October 15th that year actually performed a Script, Ohio. And as the story has been written, the Michigan marching band director, after that halftime ceremony was over, walked across the field to director Eugene Weigel of the Ohio State Marching Band and handed him the diagrams to Script, Ohio. Now, I'm not sure how totally true that is, although I have seen pictures of the Michigan band performing a Script, Ohio after the 1932 Ohio State-Michigan game. So there probably is at least some validity to that.
Not in dispute is the thrill the legendary formation delivers, especially its rousing conclusion.
And they dot the I at Script, Ohio. That's unbelievable. I mean, that's what college football is all about.
The crowd just roars in anticipation. And it was at that point that I really kind of, it kind of hit me that, this is going to happen, this is going to be it. And it was, it was incredible.
For an Ohio State sousaphone player, it's the ultimate honor, and one bestowed on just two non-members, Bob Hope and Wayne Woodrow Hayes.
When Woody Hayes dotted the I, big eruption in the stadium. Everybody's like, what happened? We're in the locker room getting ready, and also you hear the whole place just erupt.
For the best damn band in the land, Script, Ohio is the high-water mark of a day that begins with the pregame skull session and closes with the newest Buckeye tradition.
Nearly 100 years after the lyrics to Carmen, Ohio were written back in 1902, Coach Jim Tressel has started the very nice tradition of having the Ohio State football team gather in the south end zone at the conclusion of each home game, and then to the accompaniment of the Ohio State marching band sing the lyrics to Carmen, Ohio. And I believe this is one of the new traditions that will be carried forward for quite a while into the future.
One thing is certain, that future and the glories to come will forever be rooted in the rituals of the past, sealed in tradition by the people who created it.
To be a part of that tradition is something that guys take very seriously.
To come here at this university and be part of this program, I know that sounds cliche, but you have to be there just to experience it. You're in a family.
I have to pinch myself sometimes to think about all these great guys coming back to be a part of a great tradition here. I mean, what more could one ask for to be a part of?
I'm proud that I'm a graduate of Ohio State University and also give the resounding Go Bucks.
A recent internet poll conducted by ESPN asked sports fans what they considered to be the greatest sports rivalry of all time. Classic matchups from every sport drew mention. Duels like the Yankees versus the Red Sox, the Cowboys versus the Redskins, Nicklaus versus Palmer, and Ali versus Frazier comprised the top 10. But sitting at the top of the list was the greatest rivalry of them all, the annual battle between Ohio State and Michigan. But then, any Buckeye fan could have told you that. For Buckeye Classics, I'm Archie Griffin. Thanks for watching.